I'm on. Our candle selection of this evening is the confidence candle. Who knows what it is? She's a bad mama jamma. Just as foxy as can be. Wahoo! Denise is coming on right now, and Amy's going to be here very soon. Let's see if I can find.
Hello.
I took some liberties with the length of the opening song.
Well, what was the song? I can't hear it because once I put my request to join, I have silence.
It was. She's a bad mama jamma.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, thanks. It was the one I just posted to my stories, and it was the one that was rattling around in my head. Hi, Amy.
Hello.
Do you know each other?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. What do you got going on back there? You look studious.
Me?
Yeah. You got books.
You got books.
I have my office. This is my view of like when this is like the okay view, and then there's maybe that view. I don't know. I never know what to put behind myself to look like I have a background.
Just trying to hide my children. Like, don't come.
But she has a PhD, so I think books are a good, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
sort of the studious, because she's also entertaining and funny, but we don't want to get lost in there, right? We want to remember the books.
Like take off things that are like, oh, look, there's Charlie Bears here in the background. Oh, no.
Oh, those aren't people snacks? I thought that
usually when I record, I make it, I kind of check what's on my shelves, but today, heck, it's just you guys.
I swear, every single Wednesday, without fail, my dog will be perfectly silent.
Yes, every other day.
Long. And then Wednesday, 6 o'clock, and he's like, what's that outside that I've never barked at before in my life?
Yes, my dog is in a box. I placed him in a box because it's raining here. Like, it's raining, like 2 inches of rain in 24 hours raining. And so it's blowing all the crap out of the trees because it's our first big storm. So things keep hitting the roofs and the windows, and he is just like, he's defending from all angles. It's very hard for one dog to defend the entire house by himself, but he is on the job. And so I'm like, buddy, it's time for a break.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's in a box, and the little one is now defending the house, but he's a little less vigilant about it. So I think we're going to be okay. But we're safe. Yeah. We are safe from every acorn that could possibly hit the windows.
I don't need 10 days of rain. I know we need rain, but it'd be nice if it was sprinkle here and sprinkle there.
Where do you live, Amy?
I live near Denise. Yeah.
Oh, that's what I thought. Yeah. I was like, why are you guys not saying the same thing? Well, that's the way that geography works, Jerry.
I'm hoping for less rain than she's predicting. I'm hoping it won't be a deluge, but
yeah. Also, the Bay Area, because we have the ocean, we have the bay, and we have the mountains. We have like 20 microclimates within a 90-minute radius. Yeah. So it wouldn't be that unusual for it to be raining here and for her to be like, what a beautiful sunny day. It's just not that unusual. Like, eventually we all get the same stuff. But this morning was beautiful here, and my husband's like, it's coming down so hard. And he was only an hour away, so hour and a half away. So we can.
North Bay's getting it more. Getting it a lot more than we are. And
North Bay's getting nailed.
And we have microclimates. Speaking of microclimates, it can be 20 degrees difference between here and Petaluma. Like, because I get 60 and you'll get like an 80 or 90. And it's only 40 minutes.
Yeah, it can be pretty dramatic. And if you're like a plant person, this like matters, because if you're a sunset, you got the Sunset magazine books, and they tell you what you can grow in different climates, and it'll say like, I can grow something, and 20 minutes away I'll say no, because
that's crazy.
We're actually considered different.
Micro.
Climate's not the word I want.
Zone.
There's zone. Yeah, we're different zones. And my parents, who half hour away from me, consistently 10 degrees hotter in the summer, 10 degrees colder in the winter. They were in San Mateo, which has the best weather anywhere in the entire world. There is nothing like weather where my parents grew up. It's always 75 or 80 degrees. Like it just, and it never rains. It's like you can see the rain cloud go over the house, but it never stops on the house. It just goes off to the sides. It's amazing.
I can't even imagine what life like that would be like.
we never have weather. The weather's always lovely. But it might be why plants I've picked don't grow, because I don't really think about that. I just, oh, you're pretty.
It's just that, yeah.
You're not paying enough attention to the climate, microclimates. You need to pay attention to the zones, and then your plants will grow.
Might help if I water them.
We all learned about microclimates today. I didn't even know that was a thing.
You do know about Sunset Magazine, though, right?
No, I don't know what Sunset Magazine is.
Yeah,
like I'm a Midwest. You said that, and I was like, I know what the Farmer's Almanac is. Does that count?
It's related.
It's
related.
It's the gentrified version.
Yeah.
It's like when you move from the farm to the city, you stop your subscription to the Farmer's Almanac, and the wife gets a subscription to Sunset Magazine. Now, I don't even know if that's still true, because we're going back 30 years.
Yeah, are they still in business? I have no idea.
I actually don't know. I don't know. Yeah.
We're aging ourselves.
I would not be
Jerri
a Sunset Magazine type of person. I'm definitely a Farmer's Almanac kind of person. I didn't know that. I've never heard that before.
You know, this age thing, I did a poll on, for those of you who are new, we do get to dog-related topics. We just are not in a hurry.
Yeah.
Anyway, I did a poll on my Instagram and asked people how old they were. It's shocking.
Tell me what it said.
Only 10% of people are older than 44. I had a category 44 to infinity. Like me. 10%. Shocking.
Oh my gosh.
That's no one.
So
and
Madison
Instagram
has a bunch of boomers that follow her. Somehow she attracted, I was like, you've done what none of us have been able to do. You've reached the boomers. Yeah.
They think I'm a mother. I think I'm a mother.
You're a mom. Okay.
I'm a mother.
I have my heavy demographic is you might be my mom, but you might be my sister or aunt. And so it's 25 to 44, really heavy.
Do you ever get like you do a live and some guy comes on and says, you know, I don't know, something he shouldn't say, something inappropriate?
The Sky Dad? I call them Sky Daddies.
Sky Daddy. I always say, do you know I could be your mother? You shouldn't be saying that to your mother. That's not acceptable. And they usually go away after that, because it's like, I mean, you could be my son. This is not okay. You shouldn't say this.
I even involve their father in the conversation when I bring up what I want. You know, I wouldn't, sir, because I'm at that sweet spot in my age where you just don't know. And, you know, you'll have a new stepmom before you know it, especially if he's a millionaire rancher. Okay? So.
Yeah, I'm not interested in you, but could you hook me up with your daddy?
Right. I say it, and I say it a lot, and it's always crickets from the peanut gallery after that. So
that's crazy.
We've got so many friends in here.
Well, let's tell people who don't know who Amy is. So you got a clue about her first name, right? That's Amy Cook, Dr. Amy to many of us. She got her PhD at Berkeley, and back then she used to come to my house, and I would help her train her dog. So we're going back 15-ish.
I love that. So no, what happened was that you and I was pretty much done with grad school, but you and I got puppies at the same time.
Right, Lyra
and Marzipan. And I remember you saying she was kind of environmental or something like that. I don't know. And I'm like, yeah, my Whippet's kind of environmental. And we had known each other just in the community kind of, and had a previous dog and whatever. Beforehand, and we came, actually, true story, we came for a combined lesson, because at the time Denise was only giving 15-minute lessons. You could only buy 15 minutes of her time, and so 4 of us would go down for an hour.
No, I'm telling you.
No,
15 minutes
Very.
You make good use of your time. You make good use of your time. Yep. We get a lot done. I did not. I charged $15 for 15 minutes. So you came here with 4 of your friends.
Yep.
And we got a lot done. Now, somebody's in front of me for a half hour. I'm like, your dog can't work for half an hour. So
I told people this weekend, I did a seminar this weekend. I told people, because I have a question on the slide that says, how many minutes do you spend training your dog, which is setting them up for how many minutes do you spend training emotions, whatever. And as one of the anecdotes, I said, Denise Fenzi famously says she trains for about 10 minutes a day. And I said, I used to not believe her, because who can train only 10 minutes a day? And then my friends and I, we would go down, for 15 minutes of her time. And I'm like, get a lot of stuff done with Denise Fenzi in 15 minutes.
Stuff.
So I just told that story. But we had a group of friends of mine and we decided, hey, how hard, we couldn't find positive training for obedience at the time anywhere in the early 2000s. We wanted to try that in a clickerly way or in a positive way, but there was not, the dog training clubs of the area, they were doing it in a traditional fashion. And we were like, well, all right, let's get together and teach it to ourselves. We got the rule book. We're like, how hard can it be? We'll just get it done. And we rented a room. We had a little group. And sure enough, we all did okay. We got our C's. And I'm like, we're outgrowing each other because we really don't know what's next. And there's a lot to this. And there's a lot more. Who do we know is willing to, entertain our limitations and entertain what we're doing? Denise Fenzi, let's just go down there. So we needed an expert in obedience to get us past self-taught healing and self-taught, Stanford exams and such. And so that was the going down business. And I dropped out because I started grad school. So I didn't continue with you at that point, but my friends did, sort of. I don't know how long. And then you and I got puppies at the same time. And I was starting an agility class in San Mateo. And driving home in the traffic would have been terrible. So it's like, stop here, spend an hour or two or whatever. You put me in a bite suit for Kisu and for Reika, and we did little stuff with Marzipan. I've got some videos of that are adorable. And we ate dinner, and then I went on my way for I don't know how long we did that, but it was right around then where you're like, I think I'm putting up a school. Want to do the behavior part? I'm like, sure. Okay. And that was 13 years ago.
And that's how it goes. And there we are.
That's our history.
And roughly. I'm still here.
13. It's going to be the 14th year in March.
Might be 13th.
We've done 13. I thought this was 13. Wasn't this 13?
No, I think this was 11. Because Oregon was 10, 11. We're going into our 12th
year of school. Because we didn't do we didn't do Farapalooza the first year.
Yeah, no, I think I might have miscounted.
Well, I don't know.
It all blurs together after a while.
It's true, but Marzipan is 13 already now, so maybe you're right. Maybe it would be 13 coming up soon. Yeah, maybe it'll be 13 in March. Either way, it feels like a blink of an eye, really.
So that is how I met Amy. And I know when she started teaching behavior stuff, we started with reactivity, and you were doing pretty traditional, I would say.
I was doing what I was doing, using a lot of, reinforcement for the right stuff and redirection for the stuff I didn't want, and putting on foundations and teaching dogs how to disengage and interrupt themselves and all that. But I had just come out of grad school where I'd learned a whole lot about play therapy with kids and how we deal with human beings and their reactivities and their frustrations and their arousals and their fears and their anxieties, none of which is really addressed with, operant conditioning. It's a strong thing to say. Certainly there's always going to be something somewhere, but we don't really approach it with the same models at all, especially with children. With children, we're not looking at reinforcing the right behavior, when they're anxious. We go into supporting them socially and, helping soothe them through fears and getting them to talk about their fears or process them is done a lot through play. And so that was rattling around in my head because I had just graduated. And so I was steeped in that for so long. And then you were doing I think it was an APDT, if I'm not mistaken, on play or play was going to be a part of it. And
Yes.
you were writing PowerPoints, and I was sort of like maybe helping edit, or maybe you was just sounding board. I can't remember, but you had separated play into predator and prey. And I was like, I don't think I think of it that way. I don't think that's how I've been thinking of dog play at all. To the extent that I was thinking of dog play much, it was pretty pedestrian level of thinking. And then I'm like, wait, predator and prey. That's much more, I don't know, expanded or delved into than I had been doing. And so I wanted to try to, I don't know, see if I couldn't lighten up some of these dogs' loads through a better form of play than I had to offer. Because I'm like, I wasn't getting as detailed as you were. So inspired by that, I just kind of added it to the reactivity class, and the people did better. So I'm like, oh, how about I add a little more of that? How about I take away some of the engage disengage? How about I don't give them a foundation of walking at all? How about we stick that in a different class entirely and just focus on the actual therapeutic aspect of what's happening inside their bodies and in their minds and their hearts and the stress that's happening to them. And sure enough, the only effective part of that class was play, because when I give people play, the behavior problems start disappearing. And it had nothing to do with all the rest of it that I was adding to it, at least in the classes. And so the rest is born. I'm like, all right, I got to get even better at teaching the play. I've got to get better at figuring out, which elements of it, really help the people. Like, how do I inspire people to want to play? How do I get over the rough spots where dogs aren't playing and like everybody's weirding out with each other and staring at each other and it's not working because they're trying so hard, or all of that. So all of that had to come in, how to teach it. But really, just like play therapy for kids, it worked its magic, and I never turned back. I mean, and I certainly am remiss in not mentioning that Grisha Stewart was part of this as well, because she was at that very time experimenting with huge distances, and being able to use those huge distances meant that that's what helped me get rid of things that weren't play, because the things that we do that aren't play tend to come into it better when we have to be in closer proximity. Now you're helping a lot more when they're close. So since I used huge distances, I was able to get rid of engage, disengage. I was able to get rid of a lot of the obedience foundation and could focus on play because I had the luxury of space to do so. And that made all the difference. So the two of those things together, you and Grisha are on my intro slides when I'm like, well, how did play get developed? Well, I ran into two people who each had their own thoughts about stuff, and I swirled it up in a bunch of grad school and then popped it out. So that's kind of
one thing. I think many of the people who are probably watching this are very familiar with the idea of dogs having emotions. We talk about this a lot. We talk a lot about conditioning emotions, training behaviors. I'm sure there's some folks who are a little new to that, and that's fine. But I just want to say that conversation absolutely did not exist in the dog training world 10 years ago. It did not exist. It was Amy who I first went to and said, I remember the chat where I was saying, I'm really uncomfortable with this idea of giving cookies to dogs that are acting like asses. Everything in me is saying, bad, wrong, don't do this. Like, I was really struggling.
Reinforcing it.
Yeah, you're reinforcing it. And Amy was like, well, not really. Da, 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 da. And I'm like, yeah, but she's like, well, try it. You were really mellow about it. And I think the conversations went on over months. And I was just I think part of it is because of just societal conditioning that you shouldn't do nice things for angry souls. Like, I was okay with the fearful souls. I wasn't so okay with the angry souls, which is really worth, I think all of us who kind of can relate to that should do a little introspection about why we have sympathy for fear and we don't have sympathy for anger when neither emotion is a choice. So you got stuck with it. They both suck. And yet the one we're like, well, you just need to get over that shit. And on the other hand, we're like, oh, you poor little thing, right? So it's just interesting to kind of think about how society addresses different emotions. So I was really having a hard time with this feeding cookies to pissed off, badly behaving dogs. I also had many, many years of operant conditioning history because I'm a product of the dog world, right? I've been around a long time and I was doing what we were all doing. Even when I was letting go of the corrections, I was still in an operant model.
Right.
So for those of you who are like, of course dogs have emotions, of course, I just want you to know how cutting edge that actually is. Yeah. Anybody who's been around more than 10 years knows exactly what I'm talking about. Yep. And probably, frankly, had the same reaction I did the first time somebody said, you can't reinforce fear. right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and now I think maybe we're even getting more refined
We're
about all
now.
these things.
Yeah,
Huh?
we are. I started on a so you know, I got the privilege of learning opera and conditioning stuff and classical at the same time, because I didn't come into coming into dog training. I'm probably oversimplifying this. Tell me that this is too simple or it's kind of wrong, Denise. But you got in more with mentally okay dogs doing dog sports. You know, I mean, roughly. And I get into it with these dogs are already struggling. I don't know anything about sports, right? I have behavior problems, not training problems, not how do I do better at accuracy and reliability, but how do I help this dog not bite people or help this dog not hide under the bed all the time. So my entry into dog training was that model, right? So I was equally steeped in operant and classical because I'm equally in the emotion realm. And I think if people mostly deal with, and I hate to say mentally healthy, well, help me out here. Like it's not an emotional issue that's that you're mostly solving. It's mostly a,
I
a
just say emotionally
precision,
healthy.
yeah,
You know, some
or
dogs are, they have,
unhealthy. You're afraid. I mean, that's not unhealthy, but just
doesn't
go with us,
feel
please.
good.
In this live, like just I just mean sort of you're not struggling with either a mental health or a reaction issue. You are free to, and as you are free to focus on precision, focus on how do I get performance and how do I get like reliability and these exact feet, and how do I sharpen my tools to explain things really well and motivate really well. And these are things that in me were not hypertrophied. I wasn't that's not where I was good. You know, I come into the sport world, I'm like, wow, you guys know a whole lot more things than we know in the pet world. In the pet world, I'm dealing with how do I get you to feel safe? How how can I resolve these emotions, right? So I got that. So I wasn't as steeped. And I remember I used to run a 4,000 person Yahoo group when the Yahoo groups were the thing. Jerry's going like, meh, I don't know, but this is I inherited. Okay, you're muted, or maybe I just can't hear you.
Sorry, yeah,
Oh, okay.
I'm definitely old enough to remember that. But yeah, that's you're dating everybody here.
I'm dating everybody here because I inherited it in 1999 or something. Maybe I joined it in 1999. It's this group called Shy Canines, and I was the only person I knew. Not literally, maybe a few other trainers also agree, but nobody was publicly saying you can't reinforce fear. I was 100% of the time typing. I have all of my old emails. In fact, I've never gotten rid of an email. Most of them are still here. Typing, people will be like, I don't want to give a cookie when he reacts. I have to wait for him to stop so I can give the cookie. And I'd be like, you can't reinforce. Like, it was my refrain. And I was by myself. I'm sure not on the planet, but in my world, I was by myself, reassuring people that classical conditioning is not a reinforcement model. You're not in reinforcement or punishment in classical. You can give good things after terrible behavior and watch behavior change. I learned it in school, in pet dog training school, we learned this. In fact, I remember a mentor saying, walk through the shelter just on your own time, walk through every shelter and feed only the barking dogs, feed only the ones doing things you don't like, and watch the kennel go quiet. You can feed barking to have it reduce. And so that was a part of my education of dog training. It was just how we do it. But it's not how you do it if the main model you're using all the time is operant conditioning. So it was really neat to be able to have these back and forths and to really think, I'm banging this gong on. You can't reinforce fear. Fear is not a chosen thing. And now to watch people just say things I always said is bizarre because I was alone. Again, not alone on the planet. I know that. I learned from people, but I was alone on social media saying things that people would fight me about. So I learned how to fight that argument and be like, you know, have 1,000 analogies for when you have a headache at Thanksgiving and you're kind of mean to your mom. If she's mean back, it's not going to make you less bad. You know, I have 1,000 of these, these analogies, all of which I think was proving ground for helping to teach at FDSA because I was so used to articulating and typing and explaining these things to people. But yeah, I remember our conversations around like, partially like when you feed for an emotion, you get less of it, not more of it. And partly another thing, a thing I also kind of fold in that I learned from you about precision. Precision's not first. I'm saying it wrong. You know, attitude over precision, right? Attitude for work over precision, because you can get precision in a minute, but you got good attitude, go with it, feed it, right? I started to taking from you, I started to articulate that as you can feed for a mistake in the behavior because your dog probably did 5 other things right. They'd had low latency. They tried, they did it as soon as you said it. They did their best as soon as you said it. That's something you want to reward, even if it isn't the right behavior. They came right back afterward. They voluntarily joined your game and looked bright-eyed at you, and they worked very quickly and all these things. And yet we're prioritizing that. When I said sit, you went down, and that's wrong somehow. But you did 5 things that were exactly what I'm looking for. Only this one is the one you didn't want, right? So attitude over precision folded in with classical conditioning gets you rewarding errors, gets you bravely rewarding a lot of errors. I know not every single error, not all the time, there's caveats, but we could bravely go forward and say, you did a good job. You tried your best. Here's some good stuff. It's up to me to get us clearer and get us on the path again, not up to you, dog. And the amount of empathy people have these days for emotions and animals and kind of just working with them and figuring it out it's you and I mean, it's nothing like it was. It's
a different world.
It's a different world.
It's a different world. I mean, it's not everybody all the time, but the conversations that take place are of a completely different nature.
It's not new.
People actually care. Like they care. Even if you think about children. So I grew up slightly after the age of children should be seen and not heard. So not quite in that, but a little bit beyond. So my mom considers herself progressive because she didn't hold that line. And but wouldn't that be a similar thing, right? Just shut up, sit there, eat your food, and I don't care that you're bored out of your mind for an hour. I don't care. I just don't care, right? So it was a very adult-centered world, and children had to turn into adults, and that was it. And then that has changed so much, and we are so much more child-centric, sympathetic, aware than we used to be. Mm-hmm. And with our dogs, it's like everything just lags 10, 20 years or whatever it is, right? And we just sort of start coming up from behind, and then the dogs start benefiting from some of the little bit more sympathetic view of what's going on out there.
And like I had whatever mishmash of things I knew or thought from both dog training and life and being a person, and then went to grad school. And in school, there was nowhere to put me. I was going to do dogs, right? And where do you put that? Like, it's not like Berkeley has some like dog arm of the department, So they're like, well, you're going to go into developmental psych because learning about how we ask babies questions will give you all the methods to ask dogs the same kinds of questions, because you can't ask babies to fill out a form, right? So you can't ask dogs to. So you'll learn all these good methods. And the accidental byproduct of that was I learned a whole heck of a lot about development and about what's appropriate to expect out of somebody who doesn't yet have those things online. If you ask for things of young children, babies and young children, before they have developmentally hit a stage where that is possible for them, but you ask for it out of step with that, it's not as simple as you're not going to get it. It can very easily turn into anxiety. And the good example is if you are asking for independence from a child who is by nature dependent and must be so in order to organize themselves correctly psychologically, you have to be dependent when you are dependent. Parents tend to want independence as quickly as possible. So, because of course it's easier to take care of an independent being, right? But when every being growing up will become independent. They don't want to be dependent forever, but a child, when they get to a certain stage, doesn't want anything to do with you anymore. They want to do the things on their own. But if we ask them to do that before they are in that place and trying to do that, they can't give that. And so now they have an anxiety potential in there because they must remain dependent, but their figure is saying, separate a little, do it on your own, be independent. And so what it helped me understand, I'm not saying it's the same with dogs. They're basically adolescents when we get them almost. They're young children, not toddlers, right? But it helped me really try to focus my mind on what are you capable of right now? What is right for you right now? It's not for me to teach you to be different. I can't teach you independence when dependency is where your security lies. I want you to want your own independence, but it's not going to come from me telling you you should be it, right? Or any other mental capacity that you have. If you cannot conceive of something, it's the wrong lesson for me to put in front of you. The lesson for a puppy is not the lesson for an adult, right? A puppy, a neurological system is not robust toward the pressures that adults feel. And so
it makes sense. Like when you think about anxiety, and a dog. So let's say you have a young, impulsive dog, and it's frustrating you because it keeps doing its little impulsive things, and you keep getting mad at it, yelling at it, maybe pulling on it or whatever. And the dog may or may not start doing the thing, right? But you can feel the amount of angst that comes with the picture of putting out the effort because it's not in there yet. And so you're sort of forcing it, but it's such an effort.
And a good example there would be like puppy biting. You / people in sports often really understand that biting is going to work puppy mouthing, biting on stuff is going to work itself out past teething. It's going to work itself out, and you don't have to teach a whole lot of stuff around it. Just the basic message is bite this thing, and not me, but bite this thing, which is a yes answer. Bite this. It's not a don't bite that. It's a bite this, please. But by the time they're done doing that, it's just not so much an issue. And in the pet world, especially from the 90s and the 2000s, we spent a long time teaching bite inhibition. We teach like yelp when a puppy does it wrong so they can learn how to do it right. And I, of course, taught that to a lot of people, to many, 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 many people. For many years, I taught people how to do bite inhibition. And I get into the sports world with you guys and watch how you all raise your puppies. And it's kind of like, it's not really an issue. They stop doing it. If we don't make it a thing, they don't bite us, and then it's over. I'm oversimplifying it, but it's very much like this is a developmental phase. It doesn't need a lot of lessons around it. It needs a little bit of crafting to make sure there's no misfire around what to bite, sure. But it's better to direct them where to go and to not make a federal case about it. And in the pet world, we, at least at the time, we're making a bit of a federal case around it. Like, make sure you yelp, make sure you time out when they do that. They can't control that.
But it's so reinforcing, because if you think about it, at around 5 months of age, they all stop doing it. So we all look back at the last 2 months and say, what did I do? And then we say, oh, I yelped every time he bit me. Oh, I smacked him with the newspaper. Whatever it is you did, you decide was the reason the dog stopped biting. And then it's like, you mean he was going to stop anyway? Like, it's like, oh, wow. Gee. Yeah. But it's very hard for people to internalize that. Like, people are pretty big in the study of one. Yeah. So whatever their personal experience in life, they just go right to cause and effect. Yeah. And I see that all the time with things like housebreaking. Puppy biting is probably the perfect example. And you're like, yeah, well, but people love to kind of lay out how they taught their dog not to do it. I'm like, yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't believe they were going to go out of that one. I didn't really, like, I had to kind of get convinced over time of being around people who really did believe that and watch if that was going to go. And I remember talking with a trainer we both know who was raising a new puppy, and I'm like, you just try this, really just trust this, really just let's do this, and sure enough, it takes a lot of faith to change something like that. If you believe it has to be taught, I mean, there's entire books on, if you don't learn inhibition now, inhibition first before prohibition, then later when your dog might bite you in some event, they won't know what pressure to use. You must teach inhibition now so you can teach prohibition later. That's a model I learned. It was all over pet training.
And it's still active. It's still very active. That way of thinking,
it's changing, but there is a whole arm still very much into timing out puppies who are too mouthy. And all I can think, I mean, I don't have my finger on the pulse like I used to of pet training because of where I am and what I focus on now. But I know from that and grad school that if you're trying to throw a developmental lesson at somebody who's not in that developmental stage, it's not going to go well. And the amount of puppies who get very nervous about how they should interact with people, I guess I shouldn't jump on them, I guess I shouldn't use my mouth, become dogs who are hard to do some sports stuff with because they don't want to grab the things that you have, and they don't know how to be lured maybe because you did all these leave-its. I remember I brought Marzipan to you, and I'm pets. I've done some sports, but I'm not steeped into what you and everybody else that as good as you had to offer. I come to you with my baby puppy Marzipan. Maybe she's 6 months or so. And you're doing your bah, 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 and whatever, getting her up and getting her excited and doing fun things. I have it on video and everything. And at some point you couldn't get her up, like you were offering and trying to get her jumping up, and she didn't or wouldn't. And I said, I had, I've been doing some anti-jump. I did her anti-jump training. And you looked at me and said, why in the world would you do that? And you were kidding. I mean, you're joshing with me, right? You weren't being all judgy, but I sat there and I was like, why do you even have a question about, why is she questioning why I would do that? Don't we all, doesn't everyone anti-jump
their whippet with the tiny little feet, and they're clean like a cat, so it's not like they're gonna get mud on you.
They're always so controlled. Of course you want pushiness in a dog who's so passive. But I was just going on the autopilot of course, that's what we do for pets. And it wasn't even like we discussed it then. I was just kind of surprised that you had a question about it. Like, I'm like, of course we. And I'm like, wait a minute. So that day began my coalescing of thought around the dogs who won't be pushy. You can teach to be pushy. The dogs who are super, super pushy, you might want to teach them how not to always take what they want. But the dogs who don't take what they want, who cares if they, you were just like, why does a pet could jump on you? It's fun. It's like, it didn't even occur to me to question it, right? So like, I went on a whole thing after that of pet dog trainers really absolutely need to engage in sports, because the lessons that sport only at that time trainers had for us in how to play tug, how to do toys, how to engage with animals, how to have a lot of fun, and how to be reliable, how to get behaviors that are precise and reliable. These are things that in the pet world was just, at least at the time, not being emphasized. And it grew me by leaps and bounds as a trainer to meld the two of us, like to meld these two things together.
A lot of those skills you just described, in my opinion, are much stronger in the balance training community. There's a lot more overlap between the sport community, I'm excluding agility here, between the dog sport community and balance training. And there's a lot of emphasis in those communities now about things like engaging with toys and play and being light and fun. Whereas, hello, buddy. He looks a little sad. Feed him more.
Jerry's getting no elbow in this
That's
conversation.
what he's looking at. That's what he's looking at.
The positive reinforcement community kind of went through a phase of like being very serious about their training. And it was like, you stop, you click, you feed. And it was very kind of unemotional and almost clinical. Yeah. And I remember kind of really railing against that for years. I have blog post after blog post about, this is a party for two. Invite your dog. Like a lot of energy on, it's okay to be light and playful. It's even okay if the training is slower, because the goal is the joy, not the finished behaviors. Right. I think that's gotten a lot better. I think our community is much more playful.
I agree.
I think we're much more, I see a lot less of the sort of quiet stare, click, treat. I see much less of that.
We're working on it. We're working on getting them lighter.
We're all getting better.
The thing is, the funny thing about what you just said was, you were used to, especially coming out of balance, the engagement and the emotion and getting all that. And even if training's a little slower, the emotional side is I heard important side of it all, or a big underpinning. And yet, there was a block there, at least for you originally, around, but if the dog's being fearful, if the dog's being doing behaviors I don't like, now I'm not going to be thinking about emotion. Now I'm going to be thinking about the exact behavior. And I think that disjoint, that misapplication of, it's like, in one way I can think of it, but the other way I can't, is this inheritance that we get around, I don't want to reinforce a-hole behavior. I don't want to, you don't get, you're going to act that way, mister? You're not going to get anything from me. That is a parenting model that is inherited and is unsympathetic, that I think parenting is also being affected by. And it's not that when your kid is being terrible, you just give them what they want. When they're being terrible, you stop and you think there's some other, like, this is a bigger picture than just this candy bar, right? You take a broader view and say, there's a lot going on here. This kid is having a hard time, not just giving me one and manipulating me. Being empathetic toward people and animals who struggle informs the next choices you can make. It doesn't dictate the way the choices you make. It informs it. You can say, is sympathy what's really going to help here? Is me understanding where you're coming from going to change how you're acting? And I say, in not all, but a really huge amount of cases, when a dog is reacting, to bring us back to reactivity dogs, when a dog is reacting, they have a reality that does not match. They have a threat assessment that is off. They are laboring under some misunderstandings of what's going on, and they are reacting honestly to what they actually think is happening. And that's really hard for me to say, you know what? You're choosing wrong. You're doing it wrong. You're not, that's not how I want you to respond to the stressors and pressure and the thing you think you saw. You're doing it wrong. Just can't be a message. It's possible that you're doing it wrong if we're talking about a precision. I don't know. That's not how I teach that either. But I could see, I guess, an argument to be made for information saying that this isn't the right behavior and this one is for this standard in this sport. I want to teach it that way, but I can understand people making arguments that way. But I'll never get it when it comes to you're struggling with something, your safety is an issue, you got really big feelings about this, you don't understand what's going on, you're in a human world, and you're giving the best response you can come up with. And I'm here to tell you, you can't do that. That doesn't sit right with me. And I feel the same way about kids. Kids need advocates and sympathetic people who understand what they're going through. And that's not the same thing as reinforcing behavior you don't like. It is being empathetic toward behavior that you may not like in the long term, but that makes sense to that kid right then or that dog right then.
You
I don't
know,
think
Jerri and I
mistake.
have talked a little bit about parenting, and a couple other trainers and I have talked a little bit about parenting. And I think, so the problem is I only had 2 children. I should have had 1,000. Because I have seen,
No,
I don't know how many dogs I've
you
seen.
gotta have them and space them out 5 to 6 years apart, like I did, so they all get a wildly different mother
I
that's
will
grown
not,
and progressed.
I will not be living that long.
Yeah, they
So,
take notes, and they're like, "She sucked when I was younger."
you know what? If you're a dog trainer, you can see thousands of dogs over a relatively short period of time. Like if you're hardcore getting out there, right? So I've seen thousands of dogs. The kid thing, I'm so behind the 8 ball. And so it's too late now, right? My kids are grown. But when I look back, I think we're always telling dog people positive is not permissive, right? But the reality is most R plus people don't get that. They're permissive because they can't figure out how to find the line. So they stand there while their puppy chews the shit out of their hands. It's like, guys, there's middle ground. Not allowing something doesn't mean you have to be mean, but you can't just stand there. And I think that a lot of parents, myself included, just don't have enough experience with enough children to do a good job at being strict at the same, or strict isn't the word I want. Authoritative, not authoritarian, but with authority and clarity. I think we struggle to be clear and that it's going to be this way. And I know you're upset and I'm here for you. And it's still going to be this way.
Right.
Like I think that's
so many people
super
parent
hard.
out of guilt. They parent out of guilt.
We parent the way we were
feel
parented.
Bad, yeah, and they make decisions from that feeling. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and it's easier to give in. Like if you decide that you want to be a more, let's say your parents were a little hard ass, and you're like, okay, I don't want to be like that. I want to be a more kind, sympathetic parent. When you're kind of in it, it's easier to let things go than it is to find the way to hold the lines and be sympathetic. It's emotionally challenging, it's time consuming. And I think I would put myself in the category of, so the error I made was to let too much go, to be too permissive. And as I've kind of talked to other parents, I think this is an easy tip, like an easy place to go from, I'm trying not to be an asshole. And so somehow I've gone the other way. I think it's
I think that there's also something to that in we both have shared that. Can you hear me? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you can hear me or you can't?
I hear you. I hear you.
Okay, good.
I think
Denise is frozen.
Denise froze because she moved. Yeah.
But I also noticed that the era of the business mom, the business owner mom.
Yeah.
And that I think a lot of the times when I want to say that maybe I was being permissive, I was doing it because I was so busy. And had I not been that busy, and had I been back at my old job as a vet tech and just doing that and coming home every day and making dinner and doing that more kind of structured life, I don't think that I would have had some of the responses that I had, a lot of it was just out of flat out necessity.
I mean, nobody.
That my kids, that's why all my kids' GPS locations on, because I'm like,
Right.
I am the antithesis of a micromanager. I've got so much of my own stuff going on that I just expect everybody to be doing what they're doing, my kids included. And so a lot of that kind of permissiveness in me came from really just trying to make us something and do something. And I know, Denise, you probably, I don't remember how old your kids are now, but 10 years ago, if you're making your school, they were probably still there and probably still in your house. And so I wonder if that was a component for you as well, just being so
You're
pulled by
muted,
the school.
Denise.
Oh,
You're
you
muted.
are, Denise. Yeah, I think you're muted.
I am.
Ah,
So my
There you
husband was the stay-at-home parent. I worked. So he
oh, so you
actually,
had two. Okay.
yeah, so he
I didn't
really set the
have that.
parenting. And my personal belief was that you back up the stay-at-home parent. Like, I just think that's the appropriate. I don't know. He's the one who's doing it all day. I think to come home and be a snot about, I wish you didn't do this and all. Now, admittedly, we are naturally very different people. I am much more directive, authoritarian, much more likely to say, no, we're not going to buy that cereal. He's much more likely to be like, they like the cereal, right? Like, and so it was kind of tough for me because I didn't feel comfortable undermining his parenting. And probably, like with hindsight, I would say we should have had a lot more conversations. A lot more conversations. But at the same time, finding yourself in a conversation, supporting the other person without looking like you're not is not simple. So, I mean, so as I think about like my parenting journey, as I watch others, I do see a lot of parallels to the dog world.
Yeah, there's
where, where we all kind of as a collective group, like, okay, so you don't want to get mad at them for the puppy biting. So, and he doesn't want to redirect. So I'm like, it's okay to pick them up and turn the bitey end away. It's okay to crate them. The reason you're creating them is not to punish them. It's because you need a break. Like, all those things are fine, but knowing why you're doing it is actually kind of important because it'll affect the way you do it. It's like, you know what? Right now, I am not a pincushion and this isn't working for me. So I'm going to remove you, but it doesn't have to be a God damn.
So the previous version is, I remove you because you did something, and that should be a lesson to you. And the better lesson is, I'm going to remove you in order to help us both because you don't seem to be able to be successful right now in this way, and I need to support us both, in this time. I'm going to support you biting me less. It's not the same thing as you bit me and you got that as your consequence. It's a very different thing. And to what Jerri said, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? So parenting isn't hard because it's categorically hard. It's hard because you have to parent while you also are not sleeping and live in America trying to get money and don't have a co-parent, or the co-parent is lazy AF, or like, in and of itself, it is the hardness that it is, the difficult level that it is, and then everything else is working against you, pouring from an empty cup constantly. So you will, even if you intend not to parent the way you were parented, and the refrain is that everyone knows how to parent. They parented the way they were parented. If you want to parent any other way, it's going to be you doing, actual efforts. And those efforts will be thwarted by all the other empty cup situations in your life. And so bringing that to dogs, yeah, you know how to respond when someone does something you don't like, but that's not how it's going to get there for you. So you're going to have to figure out some effort. Like, if whining dogs are a trigger for you and you get really pissy about it, or if reacting dogs outside are embarrassing for you and an embarrassment is a big deal to you, like, we're going to be asking you to also do some things that are maybe hard for you. And part of our job is to support that, right? Part of our job is to say, I know that's hard. The answer isn't just give in, and the answer isn't just don't go out. Right? We have a lot of answers for you. And when things are difficult because they're against what society tells you to do, like if I'm asking you to reward something that looks like bad behavior, I also know I have to help get you on board with that and understand why that's the case. Because you will never have heard that that's okay if you just listen to culture or your own parenting. You will never have heard that's okay. So we have a lot of that still to do, but I'm really glad that a lot of it's, kind of getting done in the sense of being sympathetic when when people are having a hard time not giving you one is something most of us could embrace a lot more, just as a life refrain. When people are not great with us, it's not us. You know, if somebody's mad at you somewhere, it's like we could turn a sympathetic eye. I know it's hard. I'm not saying I'm really good at that, but it's something I think about a lot. Right? People are doing the best they can always. I really believe that. I think people are doing the best.
Oh man, I like to light people up though sometimes, Amy.
I understand that.
No, you don't. Do you think that let me ask a devil's advocate question
Okay.
for the Scorpios out there celebrating their season.
Okay.
What happens, and this is, well, I'll ask it for me because I am this kind of person and I'm always working on, you can't just be going around with a flamethrower all the time. Like that's just not the way that it is. But I find that there is this overarching theme inside of more compassionate training circles that we are to be, but a Mother Teresa, all that, that we're floating through and we're just and for someone like me who is really hard driving and really intense and believes that sometimes, you just gotta pop somebody right in the nose, and pop me in the nose. If I need to be popped, you pop. That I live by
It's
that.
not a model I actually understand or embrace, so I'm not going to be your good devil's advocate.
Right. So I want to talk a little bit about that because I also train very compassionately, and anybody that looked at my training would be like, "Oh wow, you're using Elysian food and toys, like cool."
I've watched
I'm
your whole
not.
thing through.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I also find myself navigating difficult conversations with people quite well without having to take away that part of my personality. And I have felt often in this arena that is frowned upon, that uh I'm trying to find what I
yeah, I heard two different things.
we're different in that way. Like I am a person who falls into the spectrum of sometimes let me tell a story. Because my friend Doug told me this story a long time ago and it resonated with me. It's very short. He was like my kind of service sponsor in AA. He took me through the back end of like being on the board and when you do more complicated things back behind the scenes. He was very good about teaching me that back end. And I used to cut his hair. And one day he was in the chair and he told me a story. He said that he had this uncle when he was younger that was a kind of an outdoorsman, but he was a very mild-mannered, gentle man. And he went out fishing with him one day, and I don't know if it was like a bridge with pretty fast running water under it. I'm not something like that. And his uncle said to him, "Do not lean over this bridge because if you fall in, the water will take you, and I will not be able to get to you in time." And he's like 10. So they're on the bridge, and he's fishing, and as little boys tend to do, he doesn't remember, and he leans over the bridge, and this uncle who was, I wouldn't say meek, but very mild-mannered, very gentle, snatched him. I mean, snatched, and grabbed him and pulled him back up. And he said the next day he had bruises, and he said, "What is the point of that story?" And I was new in sobriety. Like I didn't know what the point of any story was at that time. And he goes, "It's great to be gentle, and we should be as much as we can. But sometimes when somebody's life is on the line, you have to use a little force." And I don't think that's the exact phrase that he used. I think he said something slightly differently than that. So as much as it's hard for Denise to reconcile, or was hard for Denise to reconcile, well, I don't want to give cookies for bad behavior. It's hard for someone like me who has learned the most important lessons in my life from pain and punishment, things that have helped me pass through different developmental phases. It's hard for me to reconcile that sometimes my relationship with my dog is me getting mad or frustrated, because it's more the nature of my being than it would be someone like, uh, I'm trying to think of somebody we all know, somebody that's quieter, meeker, more mild mannered.
Probably
Maybe
me.
they,
Me.
like,
I'm very
they
mild.
have less,
Very mild
like,
manner.
Me.
you know what I mean? Like on the weekends, Amy, I'm running a horse full speed in very, very precarious situations. I don't even know what's going on,
there were
and
two
I'm just out
things.
here.
There were two things said in there. Your analogy about the bridge,
Yeah,
is not at all about lessons and education and training and everything to do with safety.
yeah. Yeah.
So,
The sentence was more like the
so
point of like, where do we
because that's
make that
not forced
determination?
because of that. Because that wasn't about letting that kid experience something terrible to say, haha, should have learned, right? That man was saying, oops, that learner cannot learn in this situation. That learner is going to hurt themselves, and I will do everything I can to stop that from happening, even if, of course, it means accidentally hurting them, whatever. No one, I don't think anywhere, is truly against that. All of us would save each other from something terrible, right?
Okay, let me give you another example then.
Right. So hang on. So the rest of what you were saying was, hey, it's my natural way, and sometimes I think a lesson is okay delivered that way, and it's not for me to say how you should deliver your lessons. So I'm not going to push back on you there. I don't think that those are necessary, but you disagree with me. You think they were necessary, and that's where that ends. I don't think they're necessary.
Well, yeah. I mean, if I were to give you another example, my daughter said to me one time, she's like, we were just not talking about this at all. It was just totally silent. My daughter's very stoic. And she says, do you remember that one time when I was in the lunch line and that kid punched me in the face? And I was like, yes. And she's like, I needed that so bad. Oh my God, I was being so terrible to everyone. And I was like, I don't believe in like just like spanking children or whatever. I really would like to get like this isn't an academic conversation to me. This is more like an emotional, like woman to woman conversation to me. What happens when the constitution of one being is different than the other? And our approach is a basket of these tools that we've decided are not tools literally, but these things that we've decided are those things that are compassionate. What happens when ultimately maybe the most compassionate thing for that being was something that is outside the repertoire of what we find compassionate that we process as humans? Does that make sense?
I know
I work with a lot of animals, and I just see such a wide variety among species, and they all are just so different, and what they require and what they need. If it's only this bag, and this is a question I'm asking myself as well. Like, obviously, I'm working from the same theoretical toolkit. Am I limiting the experience of all, or what I can do with a larger group because this is all I'm willing to do? Is that question make sense?
The question makes sense. It's just that our orientations are different enough that I don't know that my answer answers what you're asking.
So explain what you mean to everybody by our orientations are different enough.
I'm about to say. So I don't think that everyone can learn from a wide variety of lessons in front of us. It is absolutely effective to learn from the metaphorical punch in the nose at the lunch line or whatever, right? Or actual, not metaphorical at all.
Literal,
right? Literal.
Yeah.
Everyone learns from all of the things that happen. And the question for me isn't, can you learn from all of these things? But of all of the ways you can learn things, are some of them more in line with how I would like to act and like to put lessons in front of you? If amongst all equal learning possibilities, I'm going to be able to pick a subset of ones I want to have at my hand. And so at my hand won't be the punching, even if the punching, and in metaphorical punching, everyone, even if the metaphorical punching would be incredibly illustrative. I'm not.
Yeah, like you guys, nobody in this conversation is saying punch anything. Like that's not.
These are metaphors.
None of us do that.
None of us do that.
Think that.
None of us
we're
do
just
that.
having a thought
Thought
experiment here.
experiment. These kinds of things, amongst all of the effective things, I pick the things I'm okay enacting, because the learner themselves does not determine this. The teacher does. Learner can learn from all of the ways. There is not a specific kind of person or kind of dog or kind of whatever that only can learn best through the harshest of scenarios. And people can disagree with me, okay? But I'm coming at this orientationally as the learner does not decide these things. The learner does not decide the method. The learner only decides the technique amongst the method. The teacher decides the method. The learner